National Chief, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Dennis.
Can you tell us why it's important for you to be in Washington now and meeting with tribal leaders and others?
Oh, look, we met with U.S. tribes from, with the NCAI, the president, which is equivalent to, of course, the national chief in our country. And it was really nice to see President Mark Macaro this morning again. I know that we'd met a year ago, and I know that NCAI and the Assembly of First Nations do have a working relationship dating back 25 years. And, you just never know how important those relationships are. I know that there's been a lot of cross-border trade since time immemorial amongst First Nations and, American tribes, people. There's been trade amongst our people since the beginning of time. And I think this morning was really refreshing. They were so happy that, Canadians as First Nations, we were there talking to them. And, we invited them to the assembly, the next AFN assembly in July. And we are also going to be establishing a working group with each other leading up to July. And I also reached out to our first First Nations Premier. I lifted him up in front of all the NCAI folks and the tribes, American tribes. And so he had also committed to making sure that we try and host a Canada, US /NCAI /AFN, type of event on Treaty 1 territory when we all meet in July. But I think it's so important that cross-border trade, like there's just so many uncertainties right now. And I really believe that relationships between leaders, met many chiefs down here this morning. They're just eager to come up. They want to meet Canadian leadership. They want to meet First Nations leadership, First Nations people and communities. And I just think that it's a time to collaborate when, there's all these talk of tariffs but we never had tariffs like that on with each other. We had trade. And so I know that sometimes those discussions aren't always aligned with other levels of government, but I think that it's important that we speak nation to nation.
National Chief, what are some of the concerns you're hearing from First Nations when it comes to trade and border mobility, tariffs?
Oh, certainly. Look, we've been hearing about, people being harassed at the borders the last couple of weeks, and we've been hearing concerns from different leadership. There was a chief in northern Saskatchewan who had many concerns last week. There was another one in Ontario. And, I think we've heard the same from our counterparts here in the U.S., that they've experienced the same type of, border issues. And so there's just so much to talk about. And then, of course, there's U.S. The U.S. is such a big part of even, our economies, wild rice, for instance, tobacco trade. There was all these discussions that were had today. And, these things have happened since time immemorial, and, they shouldn't be part of, whatever Canada and the U.S. want to do with each other. First Nations and, the tribes here on this side of the medicine line, that we continue our talks and we continue to push and make sure that people recognize that we are sovereign people and that all this land traditionally was Indian land. And I think that it was a starting conversation this morning, really good one. And, they're just so thrilled to be coming up to Canada. And I know that there'll be invites coming, of course, for us to visit them in their territories as well.
National Chief, closer to home here, we wanted to talk about child welfare, which of course remains a big issue. Earlier this week, Minnegojubi Anishinaabe Chief Derek Nepinak said he wanted to opt into the discussions on child welfare reform that the Chiefs of Ontario and Anishinaabe Nation are involved in. Do you think individual nations should be able to opt in?
When it comes to Chief Nepinak's statements, I have full respect for Chief Nepinak. And I think he was speaking on behalf of his community, which I absolutely respect. And he is not the only chief that is saying that. The chief is free to engage the government, of course, directly. And he has done it as he has done in the past. He's a very strong leader. With regards to the AFN setting up committees, as national chief, I have to follow the resolutions of chiefs in assembly. Chiefs voted for the establishment of a new committee at our last assembly. So we will continue to call for Canada to return to the table on long-term reform. And of course, at the July assembly, so chiefs will be free to propose any ideas that they choose to. And I encourage them to, get their own laws ready, write their own laws for their children and for their families, and don't accept anything less than 47.8 billion when you're reforming the system. There's a ground floor now, and I think First Nations should never accept anything less than that. It should be more and beyond.
National Chief, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here, and safe travels on your way back from the capital down there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Dennis.